Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world, one character at a time. And I'm also on a mission to teach the Zettelkasten. Today's video is about, I hope, taming some confusion. I seem to be getting a lot of questions over what people are looking at when they see my cards. What box is it coming from? And so I thought what I would do is just take a static look at my Zettelkasten, not looking at it in terms of how you operate it, but what sits in it, what goes in each box, so that hopefully that will deal with the confusion. And if not, just ask your question again, and I'll try to address it another time. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the basic boxes in my Zettelkasten. My boxes are my main box, my index box, my bib box, those are the standard three, and I have an extra box which I call my author box. Some people have a vocab box. I don't have one of those. So you will see the 4 boxes that I have in my Zettelkasten and what I put in each. As you can see Zeke over here, he is my Zettelkasten, and of those boxes, one box contains both my index box and my author box. So by that you can see that when you use the term box, you don't mean specifically that each thing has to go in its own box. There are 2 different areas in this box, my index box and my author box. My main box occupies a number of drawers. This is a main box for me. The top 3 boxes are main boxes, the ones where the drawers are still in place. And a little bit of this box is a main box. Mostly this box has cards that aren't really a part of my Zettelkasten. And that end box over there, that's my supplies box. So when I say boxes, they don't necessarily line up with drawers or physical containers. So now we're going to go over to the down-facing camera so I can show you the kinds of cards that go into each of those boxes. This is a bird's eye view of my index box. All of these blue alphabetical dividers belong to my index box. That's the extent of it. Since my Zettelkasten is a few years old, each letter of the alphabet has a number of cards. My A's, for example, this is my first A card. It was named A1, and the plus sign indicates that there is another card that was added. A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, A7, A8, A9, all the way to A10. So this is the next free place for me where I would add more general letter A's, but I'm not done. What else are in my A's? When a word appears more than 3 times, for example, art here, I put a little symbol that tells me that this word art has now got a card of its own. And there's my art card. It has all of the entries now that include the word art now go on this art card instead of going with the general letter A. Now I've generally found that along about the time that I've got 10 cards for a given letter of the alphabet, it's getting a little bit dreary to look for a given word in the index. At that point in time, I would break the letter up. So it's time for doing that treatment to my A's. I did that already for my letter C's, and so I broke it up into different sections so that I wouldn't have to dig through so many cards when I'm looking for a word that starts with the letter C. For example, this first section would have C, A, B, C, D. So they just clumps of the alphabet are there. But still, I have my general letters, or the words that start with CA, and then I have my particular cards that start with the letter CA. When a given word has been promoted by virtue of having appeared on these cards 3 or more times. Now I want to point out one card in particular because it was one that generated a confusion, and that was in my W's. Like the other cards, there's a general letter W for index entries for words in general that start with W. And the card that caused some confusion was my card Y. Now I should make a point at this point in time. Every index card for me, I like to put the card addresses on the left. These are all going to be addresses in my main box, and these are the taglines. Many of you know, if you've watched my videos for a while, that I like to use an entire phrase that brings back the whole card, and those are the entries that I make in my index. So all of my indexes are going to be a card address and a tagline. So for what goes into an index box, the index box contains index general letter index cards, specific word index cards, and dividers, and that's all. And they're all white cards for me. My second box that shares this same space also has a set of alphabetic dividers. I've chosen a different style because I want them to stand out from my index. I don't want to become confused by them. These are my author cards, and here I will put an entry for every author who is an author of any source in my bib box. But lately, I've been tending to add extra things to this card box, such as cards with the names and address of friends and their phone numbers. So it's expanding a little bit beyond authors, but really from the standpoint of it being a Zettelkasten, these are the names of my authors. If a book has 2 authors, it'll have 2 author cards. Here's a sample author card for me. For example, the card contains the first and last name of the author. It contains a reference address and the name of the reference. In this case, the reference is An Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding. It's a book, and this includes my abbreviation for how I happen to choose nicknames for my books. Now, when I say book, I mean source of any kind. It could be a book, it could be a video, it could be a journal article, a magazine article, a newspaper. When I talk about sources, I say book, but I mean whatever source method it is. I include a nickname that identifies the book and the name of the book, and that's how I identify it. Now, if I had more than one publication by David Hume, I would have more than one line on my bib card. Here's an example of an author card, Martin E.P. Seligman, where I have 2 different publications by Seligman. Again, I'll have my nickname on one side and then the name of the book on the other. So that's all that my author box contains. It's all white cards. There are alphabetic dividers. My S's are split up, just as I showed you sometimes happens with the index box. But other than that, that's the only cards that go into my author box, and they're all white index cards. The funny group of cards that you see at the very end are spacers. I chop up junk mail, wrap them in bands of other junk mail, and they go into my box to take up the extra room so that my cards won't get all floppy, because if their book drawer isn't quite full, the cards can start falling down and get hard to work with. So you want to have just the right amount of space. And I'm a connoisseur of having enough space that you can get in and work, but not so much space that the cards are sliding down and getting in each other's way. So now you've seen 2 of the 4 boxes. This is my bib box, and it's a big one. I'm going to tip it on the side so you can get an idea of how much of the space of the drawer this box covers. It covers all the way from here back to here. These cards are part of my main box, but all the rest are cards that are in my bib box. My bib box uses alphabetical dividers too, like my other 2 boxes. This is my 3rd set of alphabetical dividers. My bib boxes contain cards. Everything starts with an R dot. I experimented with some other letters, but basically they're all R dot, and I've gone back to using all R dot, and a nickname for whatever, for the source of the book. I'm going to say book, even though they're not all books. So the only thing that goes into my bib box are my actual bib cards. On a bib card, I have the name of the book on the front with the author, with the purpose for reading the book, and then on the back side, I take my notes. Sometimes I take a lot of notes on the same source. These cards are all white cards, and they're just organized alphabetically by whatever nickname I've given the book. That's 3 out of the 4 boxes. Now, to avoid confusion with colors and such, I'm going to show you a small area of my main box. My box has been around for a long time, and I've had different systems of numbering. I've had different plans. I've used different size cards. Some have been colored, some haven't been colored. But I'm going to show you an area that's all quite new cards. In part, it was made for the purpose of showing how a bib main box can go together. And here's the section of cards, all are quite recently, and you'll notice if I thumb through them that most of them are white, but there are occasional cards that are colored. So, in my world currently, all of my main cards are white. And these are all the notes that I take on my sources, and my main box contains main cards and directory cards. Directory cards come right after the main card, and they share the same card number. Directory cards can get quite long when there are many alternative cards that come after the main card. I should probably point out that a directory card lists all of the cards that regard this card as its parent card. And one more example, just so that things are very clear. When you see something like this, 4D, 5B, and then 1, 2, 3, the 1, 2, 3 mean that this is 4D, 5B-1, -2, -3. There's no need to put the whole 4D, 5B there. So what's up with this directory card? This card doesn't have a 1, a 2, or a 3. It has a whole address. That's because this card links to this other card. So what that means is that this card would have been very happy to have had this card as its parent, but it chose a different parent, and so this card shows that it's related to this card by having an entry on its directory card. So now we can say what goes into a main box. A main box can contain dividers, which are just address labels to help you find yourself in the box. Otherwise, it contains main cards, which for me are on white cards, and directory cards, which are on colored cards. When does a card get a directory card? Whenever it has 2 or more child cards. For example, this card 4 has an A and a B. Card 4A has 3 child cards, 4A1, 4A2, 4A3. 4A1, however, does not have any child cards, and so it has no directory. Neither does 4A2. 4A3 has a child card, 4A3A, but only 1. So it doesn't need a directory yet because these two sit right next to each other and they make a conversation just fine without one. So that's all that lives in a main box. Now my main box is a couple of years old, and so I have a crazy number of dividers. I have little cards and big cards. I have colored cards and white cards. Some cards that should have directories have none. So I can't always just go anywhere in my box and show you the way I do things currently, because as my box evolves, I begin using the new principles, but I don't stop and go back through the whole box and rebuild it according to the way that I do things now. But if we just look at this section here, which not only is it new, but I constructed it to be instructive. This was kind of artificial. This was built off my book, Writing with Emotion, to kind of show how you could go with a foundational book and let your Zettelkasten get its structure from a foundational book. And then I also use these cards to show how then later on when you get additional sources, those additional sources fill in with the basic cards that you created from your foundational book. So I hope that helps. I hope it helps you see where things go in a Zettelkasten. It's very orderly. It's very specific. The main box has main cards and directory cards. The index box has general letter index cards and word index cards. The author box has author names and nicknames for their books. The Bib Box has cards that start with a nickname for the book and have the title, the author, the reason I'm reading it, and the notes that I've taken from the book. And that's where things go in a Zettelkasten. If you have any more questions, post them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. I hope this helped settle some of the confusion. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.